Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jenni Kitching. I'm a member of the PwC Africa Family Business Centre of Excellence, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the second session of our Family Business Lunch Hour series, where our focus is on the people in the session here today and the people in your businesses. Our session today will be recorded for future reference. Then just to let you know, PwC is constantly releasing thought leadership and tools to help you and your people during this difficult time. And the latest one is a wellbeing assessment. So on our website, you can access the wellbeing assessment using the link as well that you can see on the screen there, that path. And you can get your employees to fill that out, and you would then have an idea of their wellness and where they are. We also have the CFO Pulse survey that is continuously being updated. And we have our COVID navigator that you can go onto our website as well. And Andrea, if you can move on to the next slide so they can see what the navigator looks like. You can then, it's a diagnostic tool, you can complete the questions there and do an assessment for your own business. Obviously, we would welcome any interaction, and we'd love to help you work through navigating where you and your business are and your readiness to respond to COVID and wherever you are on your journey with your business. We have our Next Gen Education program that most of you, I hope, are aware of. The decision has been taken that we are unable to go ahead with the program as planned for 2020 because of the restriction on international travel. But please, that hasn't closed any of the registrations. So if you would still like to join the Next Gen Education program, either for 2020 or 2021, those are both open. If you register for 2020, your contact session will be deferred to 2021, but there will be a whole series of mentoring and interaction through virtual events that will happen between now and the actual contact session in 2021. So do go and read up on our Next Gen programs on our website. Next Thursday, we are having a Women in Business lunch hour session. And so those ladies who are on the call, please join us then. We're going to be interviewing 3 dynamic ladies, one from Nigeria, one from Zimbabwe, and one from South Africa, who will talk us through their journey in becoming great leaders, and also how they're navigating through these uncertain times. You will get an invitation later this afternoon, and the link will also be up on our website later if you or any colleagues or anybody that you know would like to register to join us next Thursday from 12:30 to 1:30. So we are now in our Family Business Lunch Hour series. We decided to launch this series to reach out to our families and their people when we very sadly had to cancel our conference. So we've planned 6 sessions that will run every 2 weeks. Our last session 2 weeks ago was all about protecting your people, and today we'll be looking at wellness. And then in 2 weeks' time, reskilling and upskilling. 2 weeks after that, agility and resilience. 2 weeks after that, strategy and repurposing your business. And then our final session 2 weeks after that, family governance, which includes philanthropy and succession. So please look out for those. And as I say, if you don't physically get an invitation in your inbox, please go onto our website and register via our website. Right, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce today's guests. Our first guest, Prof Elmarie Venter, is no stranger to PwC, having participated in our Africa Family Business Conference last year. Other than being a lecturer in the Department of Business Management at the Nelson Mandela University, she is the Director of the Family Business Unit at the same university. She is world-renowned in her area of expertise in both research and academia. She also consults to family businesses all over South Africa and has a passion for families and their businesses, to see them flourish and grow. Her passion is people and to make a difference in people and students' lives. She is married and has 2 children aged 19 and 16. She's an avid sports person, and we look forward to sharing the next hour with her. Our second guest hails from Nigeria. Nike Anani, with a background in corporate tax international out of the UK, has over a decade of experience in working with family businesses, both as the co-founder of African Family Firms, which is a growing Pan-African association of family businesses, and as a next generation in her parents' business and family office. She is a next-gen mentor whose dream is to see a rise of African next gens stepping out of the shadows and rising to legendary leadership, leaving a positive impact on our continent. Nike is married to who she says is a wonderful husband and is mom to 2 adorable young boys. So now I'll hand over to Andrea to start our session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks, Jenny. So what do we mean by well-being? So we can think about well-being as a state of physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual balance. So understanding our well-being and proactively managing it is super important. Being well in more than simply the absence of physical or mental illness. So it implies a sense of thriving, enjoying life, and living and working at our best. It's about bringing our whole self to whatever we're doing, and so well-being is a delicate balancing act between our physical and psychological resources, and then the challenges we face in life and at work. Obviously, this varies from person to person and family to family. But before we dive into the details, let me first check in with the panelists. They'll be sharing their journey. So just once again, thank you so much. And we're honored that you're sharing your hour with us. So if you can just answer, how's the lockdown been treating you these last couple of months, and what's your journey been like personally, and is everyone still safe and healthy? Elmarie, you can start.
Thank you, Andrea. I just want to thank you and Jenny and the PwC colleagues for inviting me. It is equally a privilege for me always to work with you. And I got to know Nike the last couple of weeks, so it's always also wonderful to share the platform with you. Perhaps I should start on a positive note that my family and we are still very much healthy and has not been affected by COVID, so we're very thankful of that. We still also have our jobs, so I think that's already a lot to start with to be thankful for. Andrea, it's actually the first time that somebody asked me personally how I feel about things. So it's a wonderful experience because it forced me to do some introspection, because I normally design talks for other people and what they must do. And I'm not the biggest work balance person, so it was actually wonderful for me to reflect on my journey the last 3 months. And I thought I would like to describe it as sort of parallel train tracks, because simultaneously, while bad things was happening, I think many good things also happened at the same time. To give you a few examples, obviously on a negative side, we were restricted our movement, social distancing. We couldn't go into our physical workplace, etc. But then on a positive note, Joanna is a third year at Stellenbosch, and Eric is in grade 11. And she's now staying with us since the university also locked down. And I think it is a fantastic privilege and opportunity to have this extra family time that we didn't bargain on, which we will probably never have again as a family. So while there were negative things, I think there's also many positive things. And I'm going to be very honest today, because I had to be honest with myself. But the first month, I was like irritating everyone. Because in like 2016, with the fees must fall, that was a very anxious and a terrible time for all of us in academia. And we had to cope with blended learning and online platforms and lecturing at the soccer stadium. And so that was for me personally a very bad time. So when lockdown started, I was like, no, man, that's wonderful. And, it's going to be fantastic. And I think after my 5th or my 6th Zoom meeting and my 5th webinar and, the 10th chapter, I had to do track changes online. I thought, no, this is not very nice anymore. And I think the novelty has wear off. And I think I'm going back now after taking a dip mentally and physically. I think I'm now at a better space again. So I think it's also up and down, you know. So, and I see it with my children as well. They were very negative to stay at home, and then they became positive, but now they become restless again. So, yeah, I would say it's like up and down, and it's not only bad things that's happening. You know, I had access to people that I probably would have never had access to this year. So even if I cannot present anywhere else or fly overseas, you know, with webinars and with online, you get to meet people that you will probably never got to meet when it wasn't COVID.
Yeah. Agree. And Nika, from your perspective, thanks, Elmarie.
Firstly, thank you for having me, Andrea and Jenny. It's great to be on here. Like Professor Elmarie, it's been a bit of a mixed blessing for me. Initially, I also went through a whirlwind of emotions where every day was a different emotion. And I realized that the heaviness of the season was really affecting me. And so I had to be quite self-compassionate and take it easy on myself. So I then realized that I was going through the 5 stages of grief and finally got to acceptance stage in April. And that's when I got into the groove of lockdown and started to see the silver lining of everything, you know, like Elmarie said, that gift of time to spend time with loved ones. I mean, before lockdown, we were all just like in our own worlds, running off in different directions, you know. We've got 2 young boys, age 5 and 2, and this is such a precious time to spend all day, all night with them, watching them grow up and create new memories. So it's been a mixed blessing. I mean, luckily, no one in our family, my immediate family, has had the virus. We've all been safe and healthy, but it's getting closer to home. A couple of friends have lost loved ones. And so when we receive negative news like that, again, I'm triggered and go on that yo-yo. So I just disengage from the news and social media during those seasons where it's just all feeling like it's getting too much. But it's been a season of new beginnings for me. There have been a number of new opportunities in business that have come up. So all in all, I've been doing well.
Sure, thanks, Nika. And if I can ask, if we go a little bit deeper, so how have you been coping with these various demands? So if you think about from cleaning, homeschooling, remaining productive, and then also still looking after yourself. Elmarie, we can start with you again.
Yeah, I actually reflected on how we communicated that to our family and our friends and colleagues. And in my case, it was a bit of a disaster in the sense that when the lockdown happened, I called a house meeting, a family meeting, and I said, listen, now here's the calendar. So who's going to cook, who's going to clean, who's going to do the washing on which days? So they all had long faces, but we dotted it in and it lasted for a whole week. And then mum was supposed to do everything again. So I raised my voice, and as Nika said, that didn't have much effect. So I think the starting point for me was both Jenni and Andrea has done the Strength Finder, and 2 of my characteristics is I'm a high achiever and I'm a communicator. And with the lockdown, both of them sort of got hit in the sense that I realized that my expectations are too high of myself, as well as my family, as well as my colleagues. And I had to lower my expectations. I know it sounds funny, but that for me was the first coping mechanism. And also to put in boundaries, because I'm a people's pleaser and communicator and a hugger, and it was very difficult for me now. And it was, as Nika said, it became overwhelming, you know, all the demands now online, because you think you're more effective on one side, but you also take on a lot more meetings online. So I think for me, the first starting point was to be honest with myself and to sort of lower expectations and to put other boundaries in place, not only personally, but also for my family and colleagues. So yeah, that was the first starting point. So Nika, I don't know if you perhaps can elaborate on how you handled it in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed in that I have two domestic helps and they live in. So all through the lockdown, they were here helping with cleaning, cooking, and things like that. But the demands of homeschooling, two young boys, age 5 and 2.5, whilst trying to firefight in so many businesses, because I'm an ex-gen in my parents' businesses, but my husband and I have a couple of businesses as well. And there were times where I just felt completely overwhelmed. And like you, Elmarie, I lowered my expectations and I told myself that balance is a myth. I think in certain seasons, certain things will take priority, right? So for instance, last week, I didn't do a minute of homeschooling. I was so busy with work. I had board meetings most mornings. And this week, I'm able to pick up where I left off. So being self-compassionate and having realistic expectations is one. Like you, boundaries are so key. Prioritizing self, you know, I've been quite militant about boundaries and protecting my emotional and mental health because I've learned that no one will protect your mental health or your emotional health for you. It's up to you to guard and nurture self. So I carve out spaces to do the things I love, listening to music, reading, listening to podcasts, or my favorite, absolutely nothing. Just lying on the sofa, doing nothing. Yeah, because I think we have to really nurture ourselves. Unless we look after ourselves, we can't be the best leaders in business, family, and as you can see, one of my offspring has just burst into our life. I'll just be on mute now whilst I try to sort him out.
It is so fantastic because that is so real, and that is something that a number of us have shared, and I have to share that when we have a lot of global calls as a global firm, and you'll hear somebody saying, I just have to go and sit in the shed in my garden because my children will disturb me, or I've hidden in this room over here so that nobody can see me. And I think that the fantastic part of this is that people understand that you're not sitting around a boardroom table anymore. You're not sitting in an office where you can expect to be uninterrupted. And the reality is that it's all merged and we're all juggling a lot of balls at the same time. And so that, for me, that moment is so real of where we're currently living. And it's okay. It's people have accepted it, and that's fantastic. So, okay, not to worry, carry on.
Yeah, I have a child out there crying now because he needs someone to switch on Super Mario or whatever issue he has in life right now. But yeah, no, actually, he caught me right as I was finishing. Unless I tend to myself, I can't be the best wife, mum, leader in business, and I'm not being fair to myself. So it's about protecting me. Yeah.
Yes, I think being kind to yourself in this time is actually so underrated. You feel like you have to do everything and, like Elmarie said, still operate at a certain level, but just actually realizing having grace and it's okay. I don't have to be 100% every time or everywhere. And the book Nika and I spoke about, the Dr. Henry Card, the Boundaries book, that was also just an eye-opener for just say no when you can't. So thanks for that. And thanks for sharing. So focus on well-being enables us to be the best version of ourselves. So which has a positive impact not only on individuals but on our families, communities, clients, businesses, and teams. So healthy habits are hard to develop and often require changing your mindset. They need discipline, but if well maintained, you will find positive results in all aspects of life. So since working from home, have you developed any new habits or that you can share with us?
Yes, Andrea, I think that I started to appreciate the more simple things. I think if you, like many of us that's in a professional career, I think you run around the whole time doing meetings, doing errands, and think you're doing the right things. But I think the coronavirus has stopped me to really think about, what am I doing and is it really adding value? And also the people in your life that's adding value. So I think we have already talked about boundaries, but if I can give you practical things that I have implemented from coaching that I got from somebody else. And I think the first thing that I do is to try and maintain a daily routine. As I said, you sometimes work 12, 14 hours suddenly, and then you try to cook and clean and do everything. So I think it's very important to maintain a routine and almost get your life into balance again, like Nike said. And also the one thing I had to guard is the mindset with which I go to bed and which I stand up in the morning. Trying to be positive, trying to embrace the fact that, I have another day where I'm not ill, where I'm alive, where I have a job, and I have my family with me. So I think it's very important to positively concentrate, having a positive mindset. That's something that helped for me. And Andrea and Jenni, I don't know if you can remember Peter von Ketz, your guest speaker last year at the conference. I think he said 3 things that I remember, and that is that you need to keep yourself busy with things that you're passionate about and try and minimize the things that drain your energy. And I think, one can so quickly become drained again by people and by things that's not important. So keeping that balance. And then the other thing that always stuck to me that he said is surround yourself with +1 people. And that is always true, whether you're in COVID or not. But, talking to ladies that's positive, that's honest, that can share honest practices and feelings, I think that is important to focus on. And then also, I've started keeping a journal. I'm very lazy to write. And, if one gets so busy, then I forget sometimes. But I think it's quite good to keep a journal, and you don't have to keep it every day if you're too busy. But I think that helps to see the positive things and the negative things and how you have overcome that. And that for me is wonderful. And then also to use the technology that is available to us now. We suddenly have access to people that cost us nothing, that sits in the US or in Europe or in Nigeria or where else, which I think is a fantastic opportunity. So yes, we cannot physically meet and present, somewhere in the country or go overseas. But in this manner, I think it's a lot more cost effective, and you get to meet people that you probably will never have access to again.
Sure, very valuable. Thank you, Elmarie. And Nike, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's so easy to constantly be working because for most of us, this is the first time where, there's no delineation between our places of work and our home lives, and where we don't have much socializing. But like Professor Elmarie, boundaries, I've been very militant about those. So I have a dedicated office where I work from, and it's like my den. So my laptop is fixed here, all my work tools are in here. And once I'm done for the day at 5, 6, and I leave this room, it's all gone. I don't want to hear anything about work until the next morning, right? And then I think with our working culture now and with technology, WhatsApp, social media, emails, phones, we're so available. But we can't always be emotionally available. That's extremely draining, and it can lead to a toxic work culture. So I try not to be available all the time and instantly. I think it's a recipe for burnout and breakdown. So I stopped taking calls from 7 p.m. And I don't respond to work emails at that time as well. So I can unwind and really just spend time with family, or just, like I said, do absolutely nothing. What I find that really helps is I try to wake up a couple of hours earlier than the boys, so I can get in just uninterrupted work time where I might need to concentrate. Because once they wake up, the atmosphere in the house just completely changes. So just getting into that routine where I wake up a couple of hours earlier, I do a little bit of work. I meditate, pray, and worship to prime my thoughts, and then get them ready. We do a little bit of homeschooling for a couple of hours, and then I'm in my office, from noon to about 5, 6 o'clock. Just getting into that rhythm really helps. And then I try to take off an afternoon a week where I do nothing, because what I found was initially when lockdown began, I was just so exhausted, and over the weekend, I would just find myself completely worn out. So what I do now is I choose either a Thursday afternoon or a Friday afternoon, and I do nothing. And then on a Saturday or Sunday morning, I choose a couple of hours where I catch up on work. And what's nice about that is there are no distractions, there are no phone calls, there's no homeschooling, there's nothing where I can just beast it out and get a lot of work done, and I'm just less stressed and I'm able to just enjoy working more.
Sure. So really designing your life and your working hours and how you approach things. That's wonderful. I just want to tell the audience again that remember you can ask questions to the panel anytime you want throughout the session. We're not going to stop for questions. So please drop your questions into the Q&A box and we'll be happy to share them with our guests. Then just another question. So have you done, we talk about habits and working hours, what have you seen in your own family business, and maybe Elmarie from your clients, your family business clients?
Sister?
Elmarie, you can go.
Should I start? Okay. Yeah, I find it very interesting dynamics because the board meetings I had online or the family meetings I had online, I find that I was supposed to have a big board meeting just before the lockdown, and some of the children couldn't travel, so we had to postpone it, and they were really fighting about a lot of things, and I was at a point where I really wanted to resign from the board because it was just getting unbearable. And we had now 3 Zoom board meetings, shorter ones. And I find that, the main sources of conflict has been parked somewhere. I don't know where they parked, but they definitely parked somewhere. And I find that online, the board meetings are a lot more effective and productive and less personal, and that we actually get to talk about the really important things, because I think the families are also concentrating on just keeping the boat alive and, trying to survive and, to keep open during this lockdown time. So I find that is one positive thing about this, that we have less time and we concentrate on things that's really important. And a second thing that I've also picked up is, and it comes back when I do consultations, that's the first thing that I normally do with my families, and I know you also do that, is that they talk about what are their values, their personal values, their family values, their business values. And I've really seen how important that is in a crisis time like this. That you really need to reflect on an individual level, a family level, even a couple level, and organizational society level, on what are the values that drive us as a family business or a business family. Because the business is still made up of individuals, and values are often very individualized. But that is for me the positive things, that I think there is a much more a human focus from the families I work with, and a focus more on non-economic goals at the moment, rather than just economic goals and grow and going into new markets and fighting about it. So yes, that's my experience currently with the families that I've been working with. I don't know what happened behind the screen or behind the laptop, but it's much more calm and reflected. And I think from a governance point of view, I just realized during this crisis time how important governance structures are. You know, if they haven't been in place before the lockdown, that creates an even more anxiety and crisis amongst families. So if it's been in place, I think it helps to calm down. You know, the board helps with the business and the family meetings. You know, they can also discuss all of the things we discuss then openly and honestly. So yeah, if I can also just mention, I just realized the importance of values and governance again in this crisis.
Yes, totally agree, Elmarie. I've also seen that with my family businesses clients. And Nike, from your experience?
Yeah, from my experience in our businesses, initially it was crisis management, right? It was firefighting for about 6 weeks. All our sites were completely shut down because of the lockdown. We have our main family business is a construction business. And so we were having to review our costs and look at ways of streamlining our costs, look at all other alternatives, liquidating assets to just have cash to keep the business going. And that was the focus. Like initially, it was just kind of survive. And through that, it was then more long term. How can we rejig our strategy to make sure that we thrive in this COVID world? You know, how can we think about digitizing? How can we ensure that we have effective tools to manage our teams remotely? How can we revisit or our strategy in terms of diversification in our family business itself and also in our investments? And what that's actually done is it's pulled us together closer as a family. We spent a lot more time just re-envisioning what we want for our family, actually. And then the business is kind of like an offshoot of that. What are our values? Has that changed? It actually hasn't. Do we need to rethink the way we operate as a family? Do we need to rethink how often we spend time together? Do we need to rethink how often we talk about the business? And the conclusion was yes, because we were also busy working in the business, not on the business, if that makes sense. And cultivating the bonds that we have with each other. For instance, I've got two younger brothers, one's in Nigeria and one's in the UK. And so we have to be really intentional in spending time together, especially now where we can't actually see each other, like on Zoom, and collectively coming up with a collective vision for the family business. And then this gift of time, I mean, it's a bit of it's a mixed bag, right? We're all kind of overwhelmed with juggling the balls, but in the same time, we do have pockets of time to reflect and think. It's given us time as a family to put into place things that we had been talking about for so long, but no one really had the time to do. You know, like on the governance side, on the family governance side, start to really put those ducks in a row. So it's just not lip service, but actually really seeing that our next generation have clarity on the family governance side of things. We had clarity in the business. We didn't have that much clarity on the family governance side of things. So yeah, it's been good in that sense. That slowdown has finally given us time to catch up. My parents are relatively young; they're 57, so naturally they probably wouldn't think about these conversations if everything was going fine and the economy was booming and we all were going off in our different directions and trying to make more money. And you know, but the slowdown has actually made everyone think, okay, really about the next generation, about their grandchildren, and how we can organize our family governance so we don't have conflict, so we have clarity, so we communicate properly and things like that.
We've got a question from the audience to Nike. It says, any insights into how your employees are dealing with their well-being? And what are you as the business owner doing, or what have you done to assist them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough season for staff and their well-being. I have conversations with my immediate reports. So we're in a construction company, but I manage the finance team. And I just check in with them as humans. How are you? How's your family? How are you coping? Is there anything you need from me? And I make allowance and be compassionate to the fact that I'm a mum, so I understand what it's like to be juggling the balls. And they might be having to, be on a Zoom call whilst the child is running riot in the background. And so it's just making allowances for them and being more flexible with regards to expectation. And having that open door policy, you can call me if you need anything. So that's been our approach, really, is to remember that after all, we're human beings and we're not robots. Employees are not machines in the organization. It's really about a community of people that have aspirations, fears, anxieties, and worries.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you
very
for that.
valuable. We're just going to open another poll. So it's going to remain open for 5 minutes. So yeah, please take your time to complete that. And if we go into the next part, so stress, the big word stress. So it occurs especially in situations where you feel threatened and out of control. I think all of us can relate to that during this time. So breaking the stress cycle will require acknowledging it, learning how to deal with it, and also applying stress management strategies. So are you aware of your stress triggers and how do you de-stress? We start again with Elmarie.
Yes, I normally get stressed when I'm getting overwhelmed and I have to juggle a lot of things. Then that is normally a stress trigger. But I think it's important that one focus and many of the things that I've already mentioned, and Nico also referred to that, but I think it's also important to have some quiet time or some spiritual time, and I think it's different for each of us, but for me it's important, prayer and having some spiritual time to just load my battery, so to speak, because I think it's different for everyone. And another de-stressor is that, Jenni, I'm actually horrified that you mentioned that I'm still involved in sports, because that's not so true anymore. But it's important to come into nature. I find that helps for me. In the beginning when we were locked down from 6 to 9, it helps me just walking around with my dogs around the block even. So I find that getting into nature, exercise, for me, that's always been a great de-stressor as well. And I think you need to be honest with yourself, and as I said, for me, a big thing is I'm a bit of a control freak. So what helps me a lot when I feel overwhelmed is to just start organizing and seeing what I can control, because there's so many things that's out of our control at the moment. So for me personally, it helps if I organize the day and the week. Because for me personally, it helps if I see, okay, I can tick this off, that's just a personal thing. I need to be organized, because if I'm all over the place, that stresses me out even more. So as I said before, I think one needs to do what suits you best, because I think we're all different. But for me, which helped a lot is to make quiet time. And also one practical thing that I've done, I told Andrea that last week, but is to focus less on social media and, just listening to the news, watching the news. I think that makes me personally very negative. So I've also been a lot more selective on what I listen, what I see, and Nika says she likes doing nothing, but for me, doing nothing is to watch a Netflix series. So got hooked on Netflix, and you know, something simple like that, or watching a program, a television program with a family, or something like that. But yeah, so I would say having some quiet spiritual time, organizing yourself. And again, if you don't organize, you know, then you include the -1 people in your life and your schedule and the things that de-energize you. So I find organizing and focusing, like Nika said, you know, in the morning, focus on the students, and in the afternoon, do the meetings, or vice versa. I think that helps me a lot to de-stress, but definitely also spending time outside in whatever form, that I think it's important mentally to get your mind just, you know, clean again.
Very true. I agree. I'm also avid nature, and I'm doing exercise and getting out there, and I actually also decided staying off social media as much as possible where you can, or just not going into a black hole when you start reading statistics. And Nika, for you?
My triggers is definitely the news. And I just find that when I watch the news, it doesn't empower me. I feel just assaulted in my mind and my emotions. And it's quite depressing. And also, especially recently with the racial tensions, going on social media and seeing everyone just talking about all the painful incidents they've experienced. I am definitely an advocate for social change, but I just find that the heaviness is just, I take it with me and it triggers me, and it's like exposing a wound that wasn't treated and leaves me feeling hopeless about our world, and concluding that humanity is terrible. So actually, not last weekend, the weekend before, I deleted all my social media apps from my phone, just for a weekend, just to clear my mind and just remind myself that actually, no, the world there are good people in the world. There are some bad experiences, but there are good people in the world. So I think it's really important to have hope. Like Elmarie, I think tending to our spiritual side is really important. However, we do that. Like I mentioned, I'm big on quiet time, on meditation, prayer, and worshipping. And then exercising is a major one for me. So recently, my husband and I and a couple of friends that live in the estate, we meet up 3 times a week in our garden. We've got quite a big garden. And we do group exercising, like high intensity interval training and things like that. Just having company and having a way to release is really, really helpful, because quite honestly, I hated high intensity interval training. I'm a runner. I just like running and just to release. But actually having a sense of accomplishment when I see that before I couldn't do a plank for 10 seconds and now I can, it's like, oh yeah, it's something positive to look forward to, and to have that togetherness during this difficult time, because it can get lonely just sitting in our houses on Zoom all day.
No, I agree. We also had within the block that we're staying, a group that exercises together, especially in lockdown 5 when you couldn't see anyone, and it felt quite lonely. And that sense of community and again exercise obviously helps you a lot. So have you seen any old disagreements come up due to stress during this time within your families? Maybe stuff that was usually hidden or under the rug, but now because you spend more time together, it actually surfaces.
Andrea, are you referring to our own families or the families' businesses we work with?
Both. You can decide.
Yeah, I personally have felt, you know, it's also a challenge, you know, being a couple together again. You know, my husband works for a big company, and now that he works 3 days at the company and 2 days at home. And that for me was a bit of an adjustment. I got a lot of more sympathy for women whose husbands retire and spend time at home. So I even find that, you know, it's not all negative, but it's also not all positive, and one needs to work on that as well. So I just find that you know, this is a wonderful opportunity to resolve unresolved issues, because we can spend more time together. But on the other hand, you can just leave it like it is. And the same for the families. As I said to you, that the ones that didn't practice governance properly, they have even more problems now, while the opposite is also true. So I cannot see or hear the disagreements. Nika perhaps can talk about her own family, but the families that I work with, as I said, because we're not physically in the same room and we have a more restricted agenda every time we have a meeting, I think the conflicts, the real bad conflicts, doesn't feature on the agenda at the moment. So that might surface again, but as I said, the positive thing is that because you have less time and you have a more focused agenda, it seems that some of the conflicts are parked for the moment.
Okay, Nika, what do you see?
I haven't, with my coaching clients, I haven't seen much of this issue being brought up, right? But in our family, I would say, luckily, we've been through a lot of high stress seasons. So I say that luckily, you would never guess it's a blessing. But, you know, having gone through moments of really tough seasons, we've learned how to communicate what's on our hearts and not to leave things, you know, throw them under the carpet. And so we've learned how to communicate during crisis. We've learned how to focus on family bonding and leave the business for a second. So I think those skills have really helped us in this season. My husband and I have had, my husband's quite OCD and I'm really not. So he loves things like in order, and he would periodically just clean like under the bed, as you do. And so initially, during the first phase of lockdown, we would clash. This is not up to scratch. This is not how I like things. But are you not being understanding of the fact that there's a whole lockdown, there's a pandemic, and I've got fires to put out in the business? But again, it's down to communication. We've gotten into a groove now where we put ourselves in each other's shoes. What would Afolabi want from Nika? What would Nika want from Afolabi? And we just try to make the other person happy and communicate where, look, this is not realistic. I've got a really busy week this week and I can't meet your expectations in this area. So luckily we haven't had any deep disagreements in our family. I think it's because, like I mentioned, we've been through seasons of difficulty in the past and practiced communicating.
Nika, we've got a question for you again from the floor. So, Nika, thank you for sharing. I can very much relate to your comments. However, I'd like to ask you about the role your parents, as the senior generation, your family and your family business, as leaders during this time. So, what role they have played?
In what regard? In the business or in the family?
I would say the business.
So my mom is behind the scenes. My mom's not active in the business. My dad is the chief, the CEO, you know, the chairman, the everything in the business, and he's really been rallying everyone in having strategy sessions, firstly about the business, where's the business heading towards. So we have frequent Zoom meetings on different aspects, from, you know, strategic direction, managing bank debts, how to communicate with banks in managing their expectations, thinking of restructuring bank loans, thinking of evaluating our HR. Do we need to put some people on furlough? Do we need to disengage some staff? Can we afford to pay 100% this month? What can we afford to pay? can we come into agreements with people that, okay, we're paying you this, but we'll pay you a balance in a couple of weeks. So he's really been taking the heaviness of the season has been a lot for him. The emotional burden for a leader is a lot. I mean, we don't have open communications about these things because he's a man, and men don't typically communicate about emotions and things like that. But I do see that he's under a lot of pressure, but he's been handling it extremely well. A lot of founders I have deep respect for because they manage to build up these businesses in very tough environments, and they're pretty tough, resilient people who are they just see opportunity. So he's also led us in really re-envisioning the business. Our business started off in the medical field, and along the line, we veered into construction of medical facilities, and then the medical component became less important. They were just a fully fledged construction company. But in recent times, we're finding ourselves, rediscovering our roots, approaching governments for opportunities in healthcare. He's been great in leading the business strategically and rallying the people to see a bright future ahead, and not just internalize this doomsday rhetoric that the news kind of plagues us with.
Thank you.
We have another question for both of you. So when life returns to some form of normal, which habits or activities will you continue with, and which ones will you stop?
Who must go first?
You can go.
Okay. Okay, Nika, you owe me. Okay. The habits I will definitely stop is eat less. I find I eat a lot more when I sit. So habits I think I will definitely keep is having more meetings online. And also have meetings online, that sometimes you sit in a meeting, you traveled far, it costs a lot, it's time consuming, and suddenly you can actually do exactly the same in your pajamas with a cup of tea. I just think it has become, some meetings and some conferences has become very ineffective, So I will definitely would like to travel again. I miss that tremendously in South Africa and also abroad. Andrea and myself, we were on our way to Namibia just before the lockdown, and I was also supposed to go to for a conference in Germany. So I miss that. I personally miss the travel and seeing my friends abroad. But on the other side, I think habits that I will change is definitely to have more meetings online, and also suggest that, that we do some things just online, because I think it's not necessary for people, to fly in a guest speaker for thousands of rands, while you can just have an hour or 2 hour presentation like this. So I find this is wonderful. So this is definitely a habit which I hope continues into the future. But as I said, I think something that I would like to change is to physically be in contact with my families and travel, abroad. So sometimes the human contact is wonderful, but I think there are also some things we can change that's less inexpensive or that's less expensive.
No, definitely agree. And Nika, from your perspective?
I will keep group exercising. So before in the past, I would just go running on my own, and that was like my therapy. That's where I release stress. But actually, exercising with friends, there's moments of catharsis, when you have those little conversations, and there's just a huge relief.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely keeping that going forward. I will. I don't want more online meetings. Sorry. I sat in a board meeting for 5 hours last week, and it was doing my head in. I just couldn't. I couldn't think. I literally couldn't think. It's like I just couldn't concentrate because by the end of it, my eyes were straining and hurting. I really crave more human connection. And like you, I really want to get back to traveling, seeing the world, and yeah.
Ladies, that's brought us to the end of our hour, and I really want to thank you for sharing and putting yourselves out there as you have done today, because I'm so certain that our guests that joined us today could relate to so many of the things that you shared with us. So thank you. We really are grateful for your time. And just if I can take one thing out of the session, out of lots of pearls of wisdom, it's remember that you need to guard your own, you nurture yourself and guard your own emotional wellness, because nobody else is going to do it for you. So thank you very much to everybody. There is one final polling question up just to get your feedback. Everybody that's attended, thank you very much. Please be on the lookout for the registration links for the next follow-up events in our series. And please look after yourselves and your people in the next couple of weeks until we meet again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. And reach out if you need anything.